Dinghy sailing is the activity of sailing small boats by using 5 essential controls: the sails, the foils, the trim, side-to-side balance of the dinghy by hiking or movement of the crew, particularly in windy weather, the choice of route. When racing, the above skills need to be refined and additional skills and techniques learned, such as the application of the racing rules of sailing, boat handling skills when starting and when rounding marks, and knowledge of tactics and strategy. Racing tactics include position your boat at different angles. When racing, a sailor should position themselves at the windward direction in order to get clean air. This can improve speed. Those shared challenges, and the variability of the weather and sea can make dinghy sailing and racing a fascinating and rewarding recreational sport, physically, mentally, and in terms of personal relationships with other crew member, competitors, and organizers. The RA, regulating authority for sail training in the UK and Europe, states that, with the reliance on nature and the elements, sailing is about adventure, exploration, teamwork and fun. Development of the dinghy. Early beginnings. There has always been a need for small tender boats for transporting goods and personnel to and from anchored sailing ships, together with other smaller workcraft such as fishing and light cargo. Small inshore craft have always been in evidence. Charles II of England had a private sailing boat presented to him when he returned from exile to England in the 17th century, and he sailed for recreation and competition. In 1887, Thomas Middleton, a Dublin solicitor, considered that yacht racing was becoming an excessively expensive activity, with boats becoming eclipsed by better designs each year. He proposed the one design principle. He wanted yacht racing to be an exercise of skill, with all boats being built to the same design. He called the boat the Waterwag. The Waterwag Club still prospers in Dunleary Harbour, with racing each Wednesday evening during the summer season. Towards the end of the 19th century, people began to use these small boats for sport and recreational sailing, utilizing the opportunities for leisure afforded by the Industrial Revolution. Larger privately used sailing boats had developed separately, and have resulted in the yachts of today. There has been some crossover, in that the sloop sail plan was adopted as standard and most convenient by early dinghy designers. Planing and trapezing. The development of the sailing dinghy was helped in the early 20th century by Arthur Fox, an English boat designer and sailing enthusiast. He developed and contributed to many dinghy classes which are still with us nearly a century later: the Albacore, International 14, National 12, Jet 14, Firefly, Flying 15 and Scorpion. He also introduced the major advance of hull shapes which can plane, and which can therefore reach beyond the usual speed limits for small sailing boats. In effect, a boat which is planing is skimming along the surface, with the bow of the boat not in the water. This results in less friction because of reduced waterline length, reduced displacement, and reduced wetted area. The driving force provided by the sails has to overcome less resistance, and therefore speed increases dramatically. In 1928, Arthur Fox introduced planing to the English dinghy racing world in his International 14 boat, the Avenger. He gained 52 first places, 2 second places and 3 third places out of 57 race starts that year. Note: Graham Anderson, Indiana. His 1999 book Fast Light Boats, A Century of Kiwi Innovation, argues that planing centerboard sailing boats were introduced into New Zealand in the early 20th century, well before Arthur Fox popularized the concept. Another advance in dinghy sailing was introduced in the 1930s when the technique of trapezing was introduced. This involves using the crew to provide more leverage to keep the sails vertical and the boat balanced. Doing this can prevent the boat from capsizing by hanging outside the boat on a harness and rope attached to the hounds or upper mast. As a result, the boat is easier to keep upright, and the sails can deliver maximum power most of the time. While trapezing can be helpful and increase speed, it can also be very dangerous if a crew is not wearing a quick-release harness or is inexperienced. The quick-release harness allows the crew to unstrap themselves quickly so as to not get forced under the boat if it were to capsize. Trapezing during a race first appeared in 1934 on the Amazon A-class freighter Vagabond 14-foot International sailed by Peter Scott and John Winter. The owner of the boat, Beecher Moore of Thames Sailing Club, had worked on developing the technique in discussion with Uffa Fox. Vagabond was spectacularly successful in that race, winning by 4 minutes. The innovative technique was immediately banned and received little development until it was reintroduced on the Osprey and 505 class in 1954 by John Westall and the Flying Dutchman class in the early 1960s. Post-World War II developments during the Second World War, plywood had become a major building material for aircraft. After the war, plywood was adapted for building sailing dinghies. Two primary methods of construction were adopted: stitch and glue and timber-framed construction. Jack Holt designed many dinghies to be built by home handymen using these construction techniques. The Mirror dinghy was predominantly built using stitch and glue, while the Enterprise and Heron is an example of a boat built using plywood on a timber frame. Modern developments at the beginning of the 21st century, dinghy sailing is still a rapidly developing sport. It is losing its image of being expensive, time-consuming and exclusive. This is because of the earlier work of pioneers such as Uffa Fox, and through the use of modern designs and techniques such as lighter hull materials, more responsive sail materials and design, easily transportable boats, and simpler rigs such as gunacres instead of more complex spinnakers. These advances are more economical in time and money, and have greatly extended the appeal of dinghy sailing. Increasingly, sailing is a young person's sport, and the number of participants is mushrooming. In many dinghy clubs in the UK, the adult members are sometimes outnumbered by junior members, and the balance of activities can change from mainly racing to increasingly providing training courses. Sailing is also becoming more accessible to people with disabilities, partly through new boat designs, and generally through recognition of everybody's right to participate in all areas of life. In Britain, dinghy sailing has also been considerably advanced by the RIA, the regulatory authority which regulates racing and which provides modular and accredited training courses for leisure and competitive sailing. A basic sailing course can be completed in several days, and participants can be sure that the training is competent and delivered in a safe setting. Similar organizations exist worldwide in most other countries to administer and promote both leisure and competitive sailing. Types of dinghies. Some dinghies come into more than one category, either because boundaries overlap or because different categories are measuring different things, e.g., both one design boats and boats of much freer design can be found in each of the main categories below. Dinghy designs are often referred to as classes. These classes are usually categorized as one design, open, or restricted. A more formal term for open is development class. One design dinghies are supposed to be identical, though in reality this is not always the case. Only the most restrictive one design classes will restrict individual fittings. Then there becomes a sliding scale of allowable modification or design differences. Restricted classes would typically allow the movement of fittings or even parts of the boat around, but are unlikely to allow major changes to hull shape or sails. Truly open development classes are also almost unknown. The famous line about the 18-feet skiff, "The boat shall be 18 feet long and the race starts at 2 o'clock," is a myth, but open classes will usually allow pretty radical changes within usually some kind of box rule which specifies depth, length, width of hull, height of mast, and sometimes a minimum weight and sail area. Classes which are not development classes are usually referred to as one design. The idea is that one designs provide a fair and level playing field for even competition, whereas development classes drive boat speed and technology forwards. The first one design was the water wag designed by Thomas Middleton, which first sailed in Dublin Bay in 1887. The class is still sailed today, well over 100 years later. All of the following classes can be used for recreational as well as racing purposes. Some function better for recreation use because they require less maintenance and can be left on a mooring, while other boats can't be left on mooring because they will capsize, which can cause certain parts like the mast and hull to be damaged. Sailing skiffs are the fastest and arguably most difficult type of dinghy to sail. A skiff has a flat, narrow hull with a disproportionately large sail plan, usually consisting of an asymmetric spinnaker, blade, jib and fully battened main. Sailors manage the rig with the use of racks and trapeze. Examples of the 49er, an Olympic boat, 18-footers, and the Advanced International 14. High-performance dinghies are fast and powerful dinghies designed for racing around an Olympic triangle. Examples of such dinghies are the International Flying Dutchman, the International 505, the Jet 14, the Fireball, the Osprey, the Thistle, the 14-feet John Spencer Javelin, and the International 470. They can all plane easily, even upwind, and they use trapeze and a symmetric spinnaker. Not all are two-handed boats. The International Contender and the RS 600 are high-performance single-handed boats equipped with a trapeze but not a spinnaker, and demonstrate a comparable performance. Skiffs are usually classed as high-performance dinghies. Racing dinghies are designed for racing, but not all have necessarily the same caliber of performance as the above. However, in many cases they can still offer equally close competition at the very highest standards, which for many racing helmsmen and crews is the most important consideration. They cover a wide range, and many are descended from Uffa Fox's seminal International 14. People often travel with the dinghies to international races in famous sailing spots such as Lake Garda in Italy. The Snipe International class still stands as one of the strongest classes, after reaching the status of world's largest fleet of dinghies in July 1936. Other examples include the GP14 Enterprise, Solo, Graduate, Firefly, Lark. A specialized subgroup is the scow, which typically uses two bilge boards instead of a center board, and may have two rudders. Many racing dinghies require two or more people to sail the boat. The skipper is in charge of steering and the mainsail depending on the boat, and the crew is in charge of the jib, the spinnaker, and keeping the boat level. Cruising dinghies are designed for leisure and family sailing and are usually more stable than high-performance dinghies. This is provided by a chined hull, greater displacement, and proportionally smaller sail area. Some are specifically designed for longer passage-making and/or for camping aboard. Examples of these include the Wayfarer, arguably the GP14, the Tideway, the Laser Stratos, the Drascombe series of dinghies, the CL16 and the Laser 16. The Roma cruising dinghy, designed by Eric Coleman, an early member of the Dinghy Cruising Association, plus many designs of Ian Orchard and John Welsford. Sailing these boats can still give much excitement. Cruiser racer dinghies successfully combine elements of both the immediately previous two groups, offering good racing performance and also being very viable cruising boats. Arguably the only two world-class cruiser racer dinghies, in terms of both the extensive availability of top-class racing and the suitability for serious cruising, are the Wayfarer and the GP14. Of these, the Wayfarer has the edge for cruising once on the water, in part because she is the larger boat, while the GP14 has the edge for racing. However, the Mirror and her larger sisters, and the Heron, can also be regarded as coming into this category. Classic dinghies are typically used as yacht tenders or shore boats, and emphasize beauty and versatility over sailing performance. Although some are still made entirely from wood, the majority of the most popular classic sailing dinghies combine a fiberglass hull with enough finely finished teak mahogany to represent the best of two worlds approach. The fiberglass hull makes the boat maintenance easier, and some think they are sturdier and will not corrode like wood. Examples of classic sailing dinghies are Minto, Mirror Dinghy, Fatty Knees, Trinker, Bower, Whitehall and Gig Harbour. Safety dinghies were designed to be used as yacht tenders with the added function of proactive self-rescue boat that can be sailed to safety. These boats are also used as recreational sailboats. Some of them can be fitted out with exposure canopies, sea anchors, and other survival gear. Examples of safety dinghies are the Portland Pudgy Dinghy and the Clam Dinghy. Catamarans are fast twin-hulled boats that fall under the definition of dinghy. Unlike dinghies, catamarans have high aspect ratio rigs with fully battened mainsails and a rotating mast. This allows the rig to be highly aerodynamic and gives a catamaran with two slim hulls its great speed advantage over traditional monohulls. Dinghy-sized catamarans are sometimes referred to as beach catamarans. The International 14 remains a popular racing class, having acquired racks and Aganica since its original design. The Laser Standard, Laser Radial and Laser 4.7 of the variants of the Laser Dinghy have single-hander whose combination of simplicity, portability and performance has done much to advance dinghy racing and training. More modern dinghies like the Musto Skiff, Splash, RS 600 and RS Vario have also increased dinghy sailing participation around the UK. Two popular dinghies used in high school and college racing are the 420 and Flying Junior. Sports boats. These classes are larger offshore racing dinghies which shade off into classes of yachts with fixed keels. Usually they have several crew members as well as the helm. Melges 24 and Laser SB3 are current examples of this type. Development classes. Most dinghy classes have a fairly fixed layout of sails and hull design, and changes are very infrequent. However, some classes can compete and sail with less rigid definitions and measurements. This encourages experiment, which often leads to innovation in techniques and construction. Examples are the International 14, National 12, the 18-feet skiff, the Puddle Duck Racer and the Moth. The International Moth is worth noting because of its use of lifting foils on the rudder and dagger board. These generate enough lift to push the hull above the water, significantly reducing friction and allowing speeds in excess of 25 knots. Learning to sail. Many people learn to sail at accredited sailing schools, or through the local sailing club. Many books and training DVDs are also available, allowing the novice sailor to reinforce the learning in their own time. Boats that many children learn to sail in are the Optimist, Topper and the Laser Fun Boat and Laser Picos. It is easier for children to learn on small boats and work the way up to larger boats as they grow. Children learn better in a protected harbor cove because there is less wind than the wide open ocean. The way Wayfarer was the standard teaching boats for adult schemes. However, many centers have moved on to more modern center-main boats such as the Laser Stratos and Topaz Omega. In Australia, the main boats children learn in are Sabot Manly Junior Heron, Topaz Dinghy, Flying 11, Optimist, with the Open Big becoming more popular. Adults often learn in Spirals or Sabres or by crewing in NS-14s or Tazars. In the UK, the Royal Yachting Association is the governing body of all dinghy sailing qualifications, offering youth stage 1 through 4 certificates, and adult level 1 and 2 certificates. More and more boat hire companies ask to see certificates before they will allow you to hire out a boat. In Australia, Yachting Australia fulfills a similar role. On yachts in Australia, a competent crew course is usually the first formal learn to sail course. Dinghy racing. Racing is one of the most popular forms of dinghy sailing, and it contributes to the development of sailing skills as well as to improvements in dinghy and sail construction and design. Sometimes the Olympic triangle is used as a course for dinghy races where space permits, particularly for events where there ought be little local advantage such as state and national titles, and for classes which are mainly displacement sailing such as the Heron. The Olympic triangle is the most popular choice for dinghy racing, but a windward-leeward course is another popular option.